Morning everyone. I've been getting myself quite riled up. Maybe there's a better way to phrase this. I've been allowing myself to feel anger about something that's been brewing for quite some time. And it turns out it's got a name. It's called the double empathy problem, or the theory of double empathy. And it was based off of a post I read last week on LinkedIn by this woman she's an adult autistic woman. And she was talking about how in the workplace she has, on many occasions, been faced with this situation where she's been very clear about what her needs are and about how they can be met, how she can be supported. And she has been faced on a number of occasions with a neurotypical person who's doing this kind of assessment, support assessment, saying, do you know what, actually, you don't need those things. I know what you need because this is what's worked for me in the past, or something along those lines. And there were some comments by people about invalidating her experience or suggesting she might be bitter, and it made me really angry because I thought, do you know what, she is spot on, because it's not that neurodivergent people have no empathy, which is often said, particularly for people on the autism spectrum, by neurotypicals. And when I say neurotypicals, I suppose I'm talking about the population at large, which may well be neurodivergent people who are unaware of their traits or who are not diagnosed, or people generally who just don't really understand what autism or ADHD are and are kind of basing their thoughts off of mainstream media. Because neurodivergent people can be enormously empathic of each other. And I have seen that there is a struggle both ways. This double empathy thing is that the issue of empathy around someone on the autism spectrum isn't that they have no empathy. It isn't that they can't put themselves in other people's shoes. It's that they struggle to have an understanding of neurotypical people in the same way that neurotypicals struggle to have an understanding of neurodiverse people. And so the empathy thing is a two-way street, not just one way. And, I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm thinking that for a lot of neurodivergent people, they don't have problems per se in their own environments. And I say they, and I'm including myself in this and my whole family. So maybe I say we. We do not have problems when we're in our own home in an environment that suits us. So yes, there can be challenges at home, but it's when our needs overlap with each other, or when the demands from outside come in that specific individuals can't cope with. So for example, in school holidays, if we're not at work and we're free to pursue whatever needs we have, things are a lot calmer. It's when the outside world impacts on us. And again, people might say, well, you're dysfunctional, you can't cope with real life. No, what we can't cope with is neurotypical life. And I've been thinking a lot about this. So for me, I'm starting to see, in my experience, the people I work with, the people I love, the people who are close to me, my friends, my family, our problems arise when we have neurotypical expectations put upon us that we cannot meet. I keep looking out the window because the school's just across the road through two sets of trees and I can just about see it. The problem is when the neurotypical world makes demands upon us that don't work for us, that we cannot meet. And just to go off on a tangent here, I don't know how many of you have seen this. There's a YouTube video called Homo World. It's produced by, I think, a university in London, certainly somewhere in England. And it's a video based off of the assumption, it's a very short video, and it's about a world where it is the norm to be homosexual. And it's about a straight couple living in this world, and their reaction to having to, do I tell my partners that my work partners that I'm straight? Do I tell my colleagues when they're joking about their holidays? Do I tell them that I went away with my boyfriend instead of my girlfriend? And it's about this kind of knowing that you're not fully accepted, knowing that you're not the norm. And it really struck me as a fascinating idea of producing a video like this. What would it be like if a video were produced of a neurodivergent world, to look at how neurotypical people would work or could function in a world where the rules are made for neurodivergent people, public spaces are set up for neurodivergent people. They have put upon them expectations in terms of communication, behaviour, socialising, body language that is neurodivergent. So, for example, do not make subtle hints. Do not play social games. You have to take absolute responsibility for your needs and your expectations and ask directly for that. If someone's upset you, you say, I find that really offensive. I'd appreciate if you don't say things like that. There's none of this sort of passive aggression. It's about stating clearly what you want. Now, I'm very conscious, there's the thing about eye contact. I'm very conscious that in a lot of cultures there are reduced levels of eye contact, as there are in, for example, Europe or Western cultures. And, perhaps that there are many people who are neurodivergent who really struggle with the high levels of contact expected in a Western European country. And perhaps they would feel less different in cultures where eye contact levels are lower. But when we think about the diagnosis of ADHD and autism, some of these are cultural, like the eye contact thing. That wouldn't be an issue in other cultures, for example. And I'm beginning to realise how much of this disability is based off of arbitrary social expectations. And not just arbitrary social expectations, but social expectations that are not the same in other countries. And expectations that only suit part of the population, and how it might look if we switch them around. I'm very curious as to, would neurotypical people struggle in the same way in a neurodivergent world as vice versa? And my hunch is, yes, they would. That it would be equally difficult for them as it is for neurodivergent people to function in what is predominantly neurotypical spaces. And I'm finding that I feel really angry about this, and I think it's to do with that kind of undercurrent of judgment, this realisation that people are seen as less than, disabled, because the world is simply not set up to accommodate everyone. And I know that there are people from all sorts of minorities who have been oppressed over the centuries, who I am positive will have this same level of this undercurrent of kind of outrage at the absence of fairness and justice in all this. And in Swedish schools, in Swedish education law, it is written that children need to be supported for their individual needs, that their voice must be listened to. And my children have themselves been to meetings where their voices have been listened to. But even with that law there, it seems remarkably difficult to get someone's needs met, because there still seems to be this undercurrent of we know better. We've done this before with other neurodivergent children. We know what's going to work. And actually, no, you don't, because this is an individual. You may have an inkling of what might work, but if you are choosing to ignore the voice of a child in front of you, if you are choosing to ignore the voice of their advocate, their parents, then you are choosing not to meet that child's needs. I'm going to stop there because I'm very aware that my thoughts are forming. And I'm very aware that I can't speak fluently and fluidly on this right now because I'm still thinking about it. It's still all thoughts in progress. So I'd be very, very interested to hear some of your thoughts around this. Very interested. Because it is my hope that this trajectory will continue and that in the next few decades things will look very, very different for neurodivergent people. I don't know, maybe it's a blind hope, but this just doesn't feel sustainable at all in any way. And I don't know how so many people are permitted to parents, families, adults, how this struggle is permitted for so many people in our world. It makes me so angry. And, I wish I had more power to facilitate change. All I can do is help facilitate change one person at a time, one conversation at a time. And that is my aim. That's what I can achieve. That's what I can do. Anyway, I wish you all a peaceful week and a week where you get many of your needs met. Take care, everyone.